Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the For a Better Web podcast with me, Bruce Lawson, Technical Communications Officer at Vivaldi Browser, where I interview people who, in their own way, in their own industry, in their own niche of the world, are working to make the web a better place. And it is my pleasure to introduce two chaps, one from Canada, one from upstate USA, Sebastian Snell and Chris Ristovski. And they are co-founders, lords, kings of Sidephone. What's the correct mode of address, chaps?
Honestly, you said it perfectly with co-founders. That's the perfect way to say it.
Excellent. Yeah. And I know what it is because obviously I haven't just completely invited arbitrary strangers from the street. But in case our listeners don't know, what is Sidephone?
At its core, we like to describe it as basically a better flip phone. It's at its core, it's a simple mobile phone, and it could basically perform all the functions you'd expect from a classic mobile device. It could text, it could call, but it's also got some additional functionality that could help bridge the gap over from a smartphone. So say, for example, you're out and about and you wanted to identify a song. Well, you could get Shazam on your device. If you wanted to listen to music, if that was a core part of your daily experience, you can get your Spotify album or song on the device as well. If you need to browse the internet, you can do that as well. There are ways to add those additional applications onto the device. So at its core, it really begins as this very simple phone. But if you need those additional apps and services to get through your day and feel confident doing so, you can bring those on. But that's what it is in a nutshell. It's a simple mobile phone.
So why? Is it a retro thing, like, you know, mad people buy vinyl when it's, in my opinion, and this is a heated debate, not as good sound quality as CD? Or is there a rationale behind sort of bringing back the simpler flip phone experience?
It's a very, very important question. And it is not a movement for the sake of being retro. It's designed to go back in time. We like to see it a little bit as a course correction. That's sort of the mentality we went into the project with. And well, what do we mean by that? Well, I think Sebastian, myself, we've both personally felt this constant pull from our smartphones. And, you know, as ambitious individuals, people who wanted to really get the most out of life, we adopt this philosophy of real life first. We know, at least in our personal experiences, that life's best enjoyed with presence, with intention. And oftentimes we feel like it's experienced in sort of the offshoots, the trips to the grocery store, the trips where you meet real people and you go on adventures. And what we had felt, and what I personally felt, Sebastian, I'm curious to get your input as well. What I personally felt is that I constantly had this pull into my smartphone that really prevented me from living life the way that I wanted. So rather than actually experiencing the things I wanted, I would find myself viewing oftentimes other people doing these things, getting sucked into reels and other items. And what I personally found is that there's power in the form factor. So if you look at the evolution of a smartphone, it really began with a smaller screen and just got larger and larger and larger, and it really got optimized for content consumption above all else. I mean, a smartphone today is essentially a tool that could do absolutely anything. That's essentially what it's been designed for. It's been designed to be everything. But we've come into the picture and said, what if a device had a bit more intention to it? And what if you could set that intention? So one of the things that we've incorporated with the device here is a modular component. So at its core, the most important thing that sort of makes Sidephone a Sidephone is this small display up here. And what that means is that as you're using the device, you're not going to feel that constant pull to, say, for example, start going through social media, start getting distracted with consuming whatever it is you find yourself consuming, whether it's news, whether it's it's just going through and possibly spending the entire day on dating apps, for example. That's a common one as well. You're not going to feel that just by the nature of the display. But then there's an additional component which is really neat, and that's this modular component right below here, which really allows you to dial in what your intention is for the day, for the event. If you find yourself preferring an MP3 player style device, well, just adding this component in here is going to make it an MP3 player first. And that now sets the intention for you. It's, hey, I'm going to listen to podcasts today. I'm going to listen to music today. Alternatively, we have other keypads, which, Bruce, perfect timing for the podcast. Just this week, we're going to be releasing this one here.
Mm-hmm. What's that one?
It's a more traditional style input. This is sort of our classic keypad is what we're calling it. And it's got 21 buttons. So your traditional keypad up here. It's got your start call, end call buttons, and then, of course, your T9 style inputs along the bottom. And you can easily sort of pop that into the device as well. And now you've got a more traditional style phone that really signals, at least to me, opening it, feeling it, holding it in the hand. It signals call first. It signals that is the true intention of the device. And again, it's such a magical feeling, but just having this form factor, having this in your pocket as well, it truly changes the way you spend your time with your electronics. And that's something that, again, I felt having this and adopting this as my primary device has significantly improved the relationship I have with any other device I then use. I'm just much more mindful. I kind of see this as a bit of in a way, a bit of a filter for all the distractions that go on. It's not that I don't have another mobile device, but it sort of sits away in my office and it acts a little bit like a hub of all the messages. It keeps them there, and I time box my use with it, and all the most important messages make their way here for me to respond to throughout the day.
So, Sebastian, it's sort of an anti-doom scrolling device, is it?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, absolutely. It's kind of, because Chris and I had, and one of the reasons this Sidephone came about is we had tried all kinds of different products in the market that have a similar use case of promising that. But per Chris's point on kind of the form factor, a lot of stuff, like you go to Walmart, and I did this to just get like a track phone, flip phone, or something very simple, very cheap. But then I found, and Chris found other things, it's just not particularly useful or usable, especially for an adult living out in the world. It's like, oh, I really wish that I could do a bit more. Maybe sometimes I do need to look something up when I'm out. Maybe I'm out and I'm like, okay, where's a good place to eat around here? Maybe I want an actual decent texting experience. I use pretty much all the time. We have our compact QWERTY keypad, which I find very fun to use. I do a lot of texting with friends, family, all of that. I'm going to guess that I'm the youngest person here. I know I'm younger than Chris. I'm not sure if I'm younger than you, Bruce, but very tech-centric. And it's like with a flip phone and more traditional, for my particular use case, that in particular was extremely frustrating. But yeah, with the form factor being the way it is, kind of a fun little party trick I like to do when I'm showing the phone to people. They're like, oh, but you got a browser, which is optional. You don't have to install the browser. You don't even have to have it in our own little app store we call the app library. We have a whole mechanism with that where you scan these QR codes and that adds those apps to the on-device app store and keeps them updated. But you could just choose to not have the browser at all. And I actually have a friend who has a Sidephone. That's how he chooses to use it. I choose to have a browser. And when I'm at parties or showing it to people, they're like, oh, but you have a browser. Isn't it distracting? And I'll go to YouTube Shorts or Instagram and be like, look, it's a terrible experience to doom scroll on. It's really not a good time. You'd rather be on a different device for that kind of thing, while still meeting the needs of a quick web search, of GPS, of being able to text, call, and do all of those things. It's just the problem with kind of building on what Chris said. of modern smartphones, it would be like it's like going to a car dealership and being forced into a 3-row SUV, which is kind of just how the situation is in America with cars. You might end up, everything's just getting bigger and bigger. But that would be a good time if the only option was just a massive vehicle. They're like, oh yeah, but you could do so much, you could haul so much, so many people. But it's like, but I don't want to do that. I have a different use case. What if I want something a little sportier? What if I want, something that's more fuel efficient or any of that? And that's kind of where Sidephone comes in, where it's not like the bicycle compared to a car, where it's extremely limited and there's nothing you can do. But it is a much more medium option of, it does almost everything you could ask of it, but it's not this hulking 7-inch screen consumption-centered device.
Oh, it sounds great. I mean, at Vivaldi, we often talk about, we on the web all the time, of course we are, but we often talk about getting rid of the algorithm pushing stuff at you. You choose to consume rather than have it stuffed in your face. It's like, I don't know, you have a bite to eat when you want, rather than Ronald McDonald just forcing cheeseburgers into you until you explode. I don't quite know where that metaphor came from, actually, but anyway. So the two of you, what, you knew each other, or you met online and had a similar philosophy and just made Sidephone? What's the story?
It's a fun story. Basically, the way that I myself entered the project was really a pull from the community, particularly in one of the subreddits called r/dumbphones. I had sort of gravitated towards that, looking for a solution in my own life to how I could best find balance in technology. And I found for me that having a purpose-designed device that was simple at its core was the best way to go about things. And I gravitated towards that community. I'd absolutely fallen in love with all the variety and sort of this, again, from day one, I sort of just had this question in my head. It's, why did we stop innovating on devices with those form factors? If we just had continued with it, and if we started to apply all the modern learnings and modern technology to those form factors, I feel like magic could have happened. And that was a question I continuously asked myself as I was going through that community. And I'd start writing some posts and see if I was the only one thinking this, and I wasn't. It turns out that there were thousands of other people who were also interested in that idea of, what would the world look like if we took the same innovations we do, and instead of just popping it onto a device with a large display, we started to apply them to devices with form factors of the past. And it eventually pulled me into the project we now know as Sidephone. That sort of was how we jumped into that first part. And as I was going through it very quickly, I realized that it's going to take a monumental lift to get any project off the ground. And there were other projects within the community that have already taken off, and Sebastian's project was one of them. Sebastian, prior to Sidephone, and Sebastian, I'll sort of let you speak to the ghost mode stuff, but Sebastian had a project that was previously successful in the community, and I had reached out to sort of get established people who had already been building and shipping phones on board to get this thing off the ground, and that's how I'd connected with him. I'd messaged Ghost Mode, which was his company at the time.
Ghost Mode.
Yeah, I had started that out of college. I had I had tried various more simple phones, dumb phones, all of that, and wasn't really satisfied with any of the options. And I had been doing. I went to college for computer science. I'd been messing around with Android specifically since I was a teenager. I just thought custom ROMs were very fun. I had a great time with that, and I used a flip phone for a while. It was reasonably good, but I dropped it and it broke. And I was like, man, I bet you I could just make something. I bet you I could just make a phone that works for me at least. And so I had just a little custom ROM for myself, and I'd showed it. And then a family member who had also been using various other flip phones and dumb phones saw it and was like, oh, could you make me one of those? Could you do that for me? Could you do that for my phone? And I was like, well, I think I can. And then I did, and I'd worked out some stuff. and he used it for a bit, and he was like, I think you could sell this. And so then I had to get a bit more serious with update servers and all sorts of stuff like that. Once that was figured out, I ran that for a couple years, just selling pixels with a custom ROM, until Chris reached out and was like, hey, I see you're doing that. I see you kind of know what you're doing with Android and ROMs. I want to build a new phone. Do you think you could do the software for it? And we had a meeting and we hit it off, and now over a year later, here we are.
And this is a shipping product, isn't it? It's in the market now. It's not vaporware like the indie phone. Yeah, of course, yes. So you mentioned Android, Sebastian, but Android, as we know, and I'm an Android user, but Android is pretty heavily tied up with Google, although of course it is open source, but there's a lot of Google stuff sort of required really to make Android work. So how googly is Sidephone, and how hard is it to adapt Android to what your vision is?
Yeah, that is an important distinction. Yeah, sometimes I get so lost in the development side of things, I forget that yes, it is not a full-blown Google Android like you would get on most smartphones you would get for a retailer, any of your Samsungs, your Pixels, your anything. Those are going to be Google's version of Android. I mean, Google also controls the open source side of Android, which is what we use, AOSP, the Android Open Source Project, which by default and on Sidephone has no Google Play Store, no Google Play services, no Google back-end features. We decided to just not have those. There are also some restrictions with Google requiring us to have a larger screen in order to even think about Google certification, which is required for their Play Store and all those services. But we decided that to be locked into Google's framework like that, and to have to include by default the full Play Store, have YouTube, Chrome, all of those things installed and active by default, was not what we wanted from Sidephone. So instead, we took the Android Open Source Project, which is by default very bare bones. We took it and then, over the course of a year, took it and made it usable and added all sorts of fun little features to make it kind of its own thing. It is still Android and it supports Android applications and all of that, but it is distinct from Google's Android and does not out of the box include any of Google's tendrils snaking around the OS anywhere.
Very, very important distinction there. I would say that as a company, we exist to create a healthier variety of devices. And in doing so, it's very important to us that we are in control of that destiny. And if we were to, say, for example, want to create software and hardware that is completely different from what exists now, we can't have a mandate to have a minimum display size of 4.5 inches, and then possibly next year have that change again. To be at the mercy of sort of a certification body or similar, to even be able to use apps and services was a non-starter for us to be able to deliver on our mission and our vision. So that's why, out of necessity, we had to deviate from the current constructs, and in doing so, it actually created quite a bit of magic. And this is something that I'm sure we're going to talk about a little bit more. But what it meant, and sort of the stubbornness that we've brought to the community, to the landscape, it hasn't. People have thought we're nuts. People have told us full stop that this is just the worst thing ever. Just build a 4-inch display device, and many people are doing so. You'll see it. Many 4-inch displays being the minimum screen size so that people could get Google services. And we said, great, that's not Sidephone. We went hardware first. We wanted to build what we thought was the perfect device that has this quintessence to it, and we let the design dictate everything that followed after that. Because, again, we believe so powerfully that the form factor dictates your use. And in doing so, what we decided instead is, this is going to be a monumental lift, but I think there's a real opportunity here to start to develop a third truly open alternative to technology. And what does that mean for the world? This is, again, why Sebastian and I are so passionate about this, and why it sort of eclipses any sort of monetary gain for the project. I think both of us truly believe that a healthy future in technology really hinges on people having the ability to build the tools and services that they want, having that openness, that freedom, those open protocols underneath it all. It's a departure from walled gardens that sort of say, hey, you need to adopt our rules and practices to build certain technology. How much are we going to rob the world of beautiful tools and potential if that's what we've built as our systems, as a society, to say you have to follow these existing processes? We're robbing a whole generation of having an opportunity to use devices like this because they just simply don't exist. And we don't think that's the right way to go about things. So we've sort of, I think from the beginning days of the project, Sebastian and I looked at each other and said, this is gonna be nuts, it's gonna be crazy. But this is something that we have to do. And that's been our duty.
Well, I love the attempt to break out of big tech's walled gardens, and you neatly preempted my next question, which was going to be, does the leaving the Google Play stuff, was that because you deliberately didn't want to be required to bundle those services, or was it more ideological? And basically you've told me it's both.
Well, so I want to be very, very clear here. We're not anti any particular company. We're not anti any particular company. And sometimes we notice that these perceptions are misread. So I want to be very clear. We're not anti-Google. We're not anti-Apple by any means. I think that's a broad, sweeping generalization. And I don't personally know the people at the venture. It wouldn't be fair for us to say that. So we are not anti-Google, anti-Apple, anti-big tech. But what we are instead is we're for this open landscape. And I think that both can be true. I think that we've just focused on what the world could look like and the values of having open protocols and experiences. We just look at the beauty of what that could mean. Imagine even for automobiles. We were using those examples earlier. Right now you have two options. There's CarPlay, there's Android Auto. But what if there were other alternatives that let developers build their own experiences with their vehicle? What if that was a customizable experience? So that's sort of what we look at. It's what could the world look like if you have these open protocols and systems, and the world looks magical. And it really hinges on us developing that new foundation. So I want to be very clear. We're not anti any particular venture. And at any point in time, one of the first things we would do is entertain conversations with folks at Google or Apple. We try actively to make these happen all the time, because I do truly believe that anyone would agree the world just looks much better. And it's not a zero-sum game. Technology is not a zero-sum game. Technology, by its very nature, just gets better as more people can contribute to it in their own unique ways. So it's sort of, if we were to extrapolate this philosophically, if we were to have a single company win the game, so to speak, of technology and devices, and Apple's very close, especially with their Neo launch. Imagine you have 100% market adoption. Every single device in the world is yours, and that's just what the world looks like now. Well, any other future device would require that company to release it. There's no diversity beyond that ecosystem. What ultimately does that world look like? And that extrapolation makes you wonder, the alternative is pretty cool. What if people could just build the things they thought were beautiful? And I think that's the conversation we've brought to the table.
Hear, music to my ears. I love that. I could claim to be anti-big tech, but I'm looking now into a new MacBook Neo, and here's my Samsung Android device. And
it's so important not to be anti anything. Again, Sebastian and I, at the end of the day, we're deeply passionate about building things. And I think that's where this project comes from. It sort of stems from the idea of, we just want to build more beautiful things. And what we don't like is facing restrictions, arbitrary restrictions as we go through that based off of commercial interests or other reasons that have blocked us from building something we thought was beautiful for the world.
Totally hear you. I mean, I was in Strasbourg at the European Parliament last week, and I'm from Vivaldi, but I was arguing on behalf of Wavebox, which is a UK browser, and Waterfox, because I always say to people, we don't want everybody in the world using Vivaldi. We want everybody in the world using what they want to use. We're against people restricting other people's choice. There's enough people for us all to make a living. There certainly are. So a mutual friend of ours who's been on this podcast before and yet remains my friend, so obviously I'm not that too bad, Torquemada, and Mr. John Osbey of Crypty, he said to ask you chaps about RCS. Now, I know RCS as being sort of SMS plus emojis, and ostensibly an open standard. But apparently it was very hard for you folks to deal with. Why would it be hard to deal with an open standard? What's the story?
Yeah, RCS is sorry, I'm just shuffling in my chair. RCS is a perfect example of one of the things that we really don't like. I mean, we like when it works, but it's a example of something that is, we think, quite a bit more gate-kept than it should be. Again, for something that's ostensibly an open standard. The primary issue with RCS, which is, it's an advanced messaging protocol. I should remember what RCS stands for. Rich Communication Standard, something, something along those lines. And it mimics, for people who are used to iMessage, being able to react to messages and all of that, it mimics that functionality. It builds on top of SMS and MMS, which are the usual texting that people be familiar with, where you just send a message and then the person responds to that message, but they're not able to, put a heart on it. And it doesn't support, as depending on the carrier, high res video, audio, sending, all of that. And so RCS, iMessage was kind of the original framework on top of that, restricted, of course, to Apple devices. And then RCS over the past several years has been built up to be an alternative and also a compatible alternative, so that somebody with an iPhone using iMessage, somebody with RCS can send high-res photos, videos, interact with each other's messages. It's very cool, but it does require your messages to go through a central server, and that's what handles a lot of the processing for the message interactions and the high-res media and all of that. And currently, the only company that's there may be, I think, still a few carriers who have their own, but for the most part, all of RCS is going through Google servers. And there isn't a clear way of how somebody else can operate their own. There's all kinds of stuff in the background that is required. Like, I kind of think I could just set up an RCS server here in the office and run off that. So if you want RCS, you have to go through Google servers. And there's not an open way to do that. One, there would probably be concerns with, some people I'm sure would have concerns with everything going through Google, and there are possibly issues with that. We'd love to see more companies and more people. This diversification is always good. Yes. But also, there's just no way, if you are not Google certified as a device, to connect to this server and enable RCS for your device. There's just not a way to do it.
The frustrating part, at least from my lens, going through this challenge personally, has been there's this tendency for the companies behind it to sort of say, oh, this is for security, where it really isn't. There's no real security reason on the device. The devices are secure. It becomes do you have the certification or not? It's that the ecosystem that appears to be the leading driver here. And it's something we'd want to see changed, again, for the betterment of the device. There's so much usability that the device can provide that we're not against if we were to have these additional services available for people to opt into.
Got it. And I was refreshing my memory today because I knew I was going to be speaking to you chaps, and I noticed that you're really open and honest about what Sidephone is and what it isn't. You know, you don't claim or appear to claim that it does things that it can't do. You're refreshingly direct about that, which I like, because we've all bought things sort of expecting it does this or that, and it doesn't, but you were allowed to believe it. So I suppose this is leading me to you're a commercial entity. You're hoping at least to be able to cover your costs, if not wear ermine robes and sit on granite thrones surrounded by statues of Anubis. But how are you going to make money by being honest?
It's a great question. I don't know that we've solved that answer just yet. But you know, the reality again is just going back to the beginning of the call. It's fortunately purpose driven. I think Sebastian and I agree. I think again from the beginning of the project, we sort of going into this. The reason why we've created such a powerful partnership is because we went into this with the mindset that, you know, if not us, then who? Or for this sort of shift. It's like literally we looked at the tech landscape and every device shifting and just cementing this smartphone society. And we looked at each other and said, you know, if there's going to be a change, it's now or never. If not us, then who? And fortunately, the way that we measure our success is, you know, can we have the basics and the necessities that we need to live a comfortable life? And we're aware and mature enough to know that everything beyond that has diminishing returns. In fact, it actually causes possibly more anxiety than benefits to have all of those things just sitting around. You can't use them all at once. So we're of a lens where, you know, we're mature and realistic about what we need, and fortunately, that's not out of the realm of possibility to achieve. So, yeah, I think that that's sort of the lens that has brought us into the project, and we can absolutely achieve that. So, are we going to become a $4 trillion company? That is, I mean, remains to be seen. I don't know what that would look like. It's not something we think about often. What we think about is the next step forward, and the next step forward is, you know, how can we make the device more usable for folks who want to get through their day confidently but don't want the distractions and the constant pull that they feel with their smartphone, and sort of just pulling me into that prior conversation as well. Bruce, I think you described it as sort of this anti-doom scroll device, and I think that that's a benefit, but I don't think that's the device itself, and I think it's a very important distinction. When you see a phone like this in someone's pocket, it doesn't have to be Sidephone, but it could be a phone of this nature, of this style. It's not that that person had an addiction that they wanted to solve. It's not an anti-doom scroll device. What we see it as is that's just a feature, a benefit. But what the device ultimately signals, and the reason why we built it, is because we wanted tools around us. We wanted technology around us that lets us focus on ourselves, on what we find important in life, on the moments around us. And we wanted we wanted to adopt this life of real life first. It was this idea that you know, technology should be there in the back seat, but we're ultimately in control of our life, our destiny, and we're getting the most of it. And that's what the device to us signals, and what the intent is. All the other things around it are just benefits.
A few moments later.
And there, gentle listeners, is where the MacBook that was recording decided to break down. But it was the end of the questions, and it was only the goodbyes that were missing from the recording. We're very grateful to Sebastian and Chris, A, for coming on and talking about it, and B, for injecting a bit of competition and something exciting into the pretty stagnant phone market, which is just seeing basically boring incremental releases year on year. Sidephone is indeed a shipping product. You can get it in 60 odd countries on sidephone.com. I'm pleased to say that Vivaldi is one of the browsers, along with Firefox, that's offered in the browser pack that Sidephone allows you to install. And we will no doubt have Chris and Sebastian back on in the not too distant future, as we often like to do, to find out how the projects that our guests have been discussing are progressing. So, thank you very much for listening, and see you again on the next For a Better Web podcast. Bye. Love you. No, you hang up. Love you.